Okay, let's unpack this. When you think about the dangers up in the Himalayas, your mind probably jumps straight to, the death zone, right? Those super icy technical climbs way, way up high, stuff only elite mountaineers usually tackle.
Exactly. The 8,000-meter plus peaks.
But the analysis we've pulled together for you today shows something, well, broader, and honestly, maybe more concerning in some ways. Even the areas we used to think of as non-technical, like accessible for high-altitude trekking. They're proving incredibly dangerous and unpredictable now.
That's really the core of it, a wider threat profile.
So today we're diving deep into a whole stack of recent events. We've got reports on crises, tragedies, unfolding both right on Everest slopes and in those surrounding trekking areas. Our mission here is to look past the big headlines, the massive snowstorms trapping hundreds, the record death tolls, and really pull out what these incidents tell us. What do they reveal about the escalating risks, maybe the changing climate, and the huge, almost overwhelming challenge of rescue at those altitudes?
It's a complex picture, definitely.
And we absolutely have to start with this staggering event that happened recently. Put hundreds of people in real danger, almost instantly. I'm talking about that severe, sudden snowstorm on the Tibetan side of Everest, right during China's Golden Week holiday.
Right. And what's immediately critical to grasp here is the timing and the location. This wasn't like some freak early season storm hitting professional climbing teams. No. It slammed an area that's heavily used by tourists, specifically for those non-technical treks, the base camp access trails, that kind of thing.
And it hit in October.
In October.
Which is supposed to be prime trekking season, isn't it? Usually known for stable weather.
Precisely. October's typically lauded for clear skies, less snow, kind of the tail end of the mild season. That's why so many tourists are there for Golden Week.
They feel it's predictable, safe.
Exactly. But this just highlights the terrifying speed, the unpredictability of the weather systems now. This massive storm just rolled in almost out of nowhere, turned a popular tourist spot into an immediate crisis zone.
We're talking hundreds of trekkers trapped.
Yeah, hundreds trapped. And critically, trapped at really high elevations, over 4,900 meters. That's about 16,000 feet. Now, for people who might not be fully acclimatized, that altitude is dangerous, even in good weather.
Life-threatening, yeah.
Absolutely. And then throw in a sudden blizzard.
And the chaos wasn't just on the trails, right? The reports mentioned wider disruption.
Oh, yeah. The scale was huge. It wasn't just a hiking problem. The storm knocked out critical communications, caused power outages in nearby towns. It basically isolated hundreds of people instantly in one of the world's toughest environments.
Wow.
It creates this sort of domino effect. When the local infrastructure goes down power, comms there. You're totally reliant on immediate physical rescue efforts. And those resources are already stretched incredibly thin, even on a good day.
So this incident really throws up a big question, doesn't it, about high-volume tourism in these areas?
It does. When an area previously seen as relatively benign suddenly gets hit by extreme, unexpected weather, does the emergency setup have any real chance of coping?
Based on the reports, the response was massive. But it sounds like it was barely enough. The numbers are just staggering. Initial reports said at least 350 people were rescued or extracted.
Which is a huge number in itself.
Right. But then the sources also noted that in that first frantic phase, maybe 200 people were still stranded or unaccounted for.
200 still out there.
That's like a small military operation needed just for one weather event.
The logistics are immense. High-altitude mass rescue, even off the main summit routes, it's just enormous. The sources detail the scale of resources they had to pull together. Hundreds of trained personnel, specialized drones for scouting.
Drones, wow.
Yeah, and crucially, local resources too. Horses, villagers helping out, even oxen, all needed just to plow through these sudden, deep snowdrifts to reach people.
Just to clear paths.
Exactly. It's an effort that drains every available resource, physically and financially, in the region.
And amidst all that, the mass rescues, there was this one specific, really harrowing story that captured how quickly things turned deadly. The sources focused on the death of Taejun Park.
Ah, yes. The story of Taejun Park, a 46-year-old climber from Korea. It's a perfect, just chilling example of how time becomes the enemy at altitude. He was attempting Mera Peak. It's a popular peak, considered relatively accessible, not super technical.
Right.
His plan was for about an 8-hour climb, but then suddenly he was just engulfed by a complete whiteout.
Blinding snow, zero visibility, and that whiteout just stretched his time out there dramatically.
Dramatically. That planned 8-hour push turned into over 27 hours stuck out in those conditions. Freezing, blinding snow.
27 hours.
Think about what that does to the body. At high altitude, you're already running on fumes, basically. Burning reserves, just staying warm. Force yourself to keep going for an extra 19 hours. Your body just crashes. Glycogen stores gone, massive hypothermia risk.
Any resources he carried would be long gone.
Food, water, any supplemental oxygen if he had it. Yeah, totally exhausted way before he could get to safety.
So even if the route wasn't the hardest, technically speaking, it was the weather forcing that extra time, that massive exposure that was the killer.
Absolutely. No visibility means you can't navigate. Prolonged exposure means energy plummets, cognitive function goes. Tragically, his body was found later about 600 meters below the summit of Mera Peak.
It's just a stark reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the high Himalayas, the environment itself, the weather, that's often the biggest danger. Maybe even more than the steep ice sometimes.
Precisely.
Okay, so that terrifying weather crisis in the trekking areas, it leads us right into the wider issue, the escalating risk on Everest itself. If these supposedly less technical areas are seeing this level of chaos, what's happening on the world's highest mountain, where the risk is already known to be extreme, the numbers seem to be going up.
They are. If you connect that severe trekking incident to the bigger picture of extreme mountaineering, the stats absolutely confirm this volatility is translating into more deaths. 2023 was a truly awful year on Everest. Officially, it was the deadliest climbing season since the earthquake year of 2015. 18 confirmed deaths.
18? That number just hangs there. But what are the experts, the people on the ground, pointing to as the main drivers? Is it just the weather, or are there other factors?
It seems to be a really toxic mix, actually. The sources we looked at consistently mention a combination of three big things. First, yes, the increasingly unpredictable weather we've been talking about. Second, the constant danger of altitude sickness, HACE and HATE-P. But third, and this one feels like maybe it's more manageable, is chronic overcrowding on the standard routes.
Overcrowding. Okay, I get how that's a logistical nightmare. But how does it directly make dying from altitude sickness more likely? That feels almost counterintuitive.
It becomes physiological very, very quickly. Think about those infamous bottleneck points, like the Hillary Step or the areas near Camp 4, the South Col. When you have dozens of climbers, many relying on bottled oxygen, stuck waiting in line for hours. Just to move up or down a few meters.
Or like just standing there.
That's critical time wasted. Every hour you spend waiting at 8,500 meters, your oxygen bottle is draining, and your body is fighting a losing battle against extreme hypoxia. So, overcrowding basically eats up your safety margin. It forces climbers into these queues, burning precious time, burning precious oxygen reserves. And that exponentially increases the chances of developing severe altitude sickness, like cerebral or pulmonary edema. Bad weather just makes those bottlenecks even worse, more dangerous.
Okay, that makes sense. It forces exposure.
Exactly. Forced, prolonged exposure at extreme altitude.
So to put faces to these numbers, these statistics, we need to look at those really high-profile recent stories that were in our sources.
Yeah.
They highlight the risks, but also the incredible efforts involved.
Absolutely. And the 2024 disappearance is such a stark reminder that sometimes the greatest danger comes after you've reached the top. We're talking about the British climber Dan Paterson and his guide, Pastenji Sherpa.
I remember hearing about this.
They successfully made the summit in May 2024, achieved the ultimate goal. But then, tragically, they were just never heard from again on the descent.
It's chilling when highly experienced people, especially with a guide, simply vanish like that. What does that tell us?
It really underscores a critical point, one that's maybe overlooked sometimes. The way down is almost always more dangerous than the way up.
Really? Why is that?
Well, climbers are exhausted after the summit push. Their energy reserves are depleted. Weather can change in minutes up there. And their tolerance for low oxygen actually decreases after prolonged exposure. So when experienced climbers with the top guide disappear on descent, it strongly suggests they were likely overwhelmed, maybe by a sudden storm, a whiteout, or perhaps a sudden physical collapse during that most vulnerable phase.
Just incredibly vulnerable.
Extremely.
But then, conversely, the materials also highlight just breathtaking heroism. Acts needed just to stop the death toll from being even higher. We have to talk about that incredible rescue in 2023 involving the Nepali Sherpa, Gelje Sherpa.
Ah, yes. That incident, it just perfectly encapsulates the extraordinary human effort involved now. Gelje Sherpa found a Malaysian climber literally shivering and near death. Totally incapacitated, up in the death zone, that brutal area above Camp 4.
Found him alive. but barely.
Barely. And rescuing someone from there, moving an unresponsive person through that terrain.
It must be one of the hardest physical things anyone can possibly do.
It truly is. Many described it as one of the most challenging rescues the Sherpa community has ever pulled off. Gelje essentially had to strap the climber to his back, drag him, carry him across treacherous ground for hours. Miles, maybe. All while working in an environment where every single step takes monumental effort. And often the rescuer themselves might not have enough supplemental oxygen.
He risked his own life completely.
Absolutely. And the fact that these kinds of extraordinary life-risking rescues are becoming, well, almost a regular occurrence now, it speaks volumes about the level of danger people are facing and the sheer number of people getting into serious trouble up there.
Okay, so if we pull these threads together, we have the sudden, chaotic crisis hitting trekkers. We have record climbing deaths driven partly by crowds. And we have these intense, exhausting, heroic rescues becoming necessary. What's the big picture message? What conclusion do these sources really force us to confront?
I think the overarching message is pretty stark, and it's consistent across all these incidents. The mountain's inherent dangers are getting worse, they're intensifying, and crucially, that risk is sort of democratizing. It's spreading beyond just the super technical 8,000-meter peaks. It's hitting areas people used to think were relatively safe.
Like the trekking rates.
Exactly. So these incidents really hammer home the absolute non-negotiable need for rigorous planning. Contingency planning, not just planning for a good weather climb, but planning for sudden, complete environmental collapse.
So planning for normal just isn't good enough anymore. You have to plan for the worst case scenario.
You absolutely have to. There needs to be continuous, real-time awareness of weather. A profound respect for how volatile these systems are becoming, likely influenced by broader climate change. And that applies whether you're, professional climber with all the gear and oxygen or a first-time high-altitude trekker just going to base camp. The high Himalayas are demanding respect for dangers that are clearly being amplified now, amplified by crowds and amplified by these big planetary shifts in weather.
Yeah, it's really clear the risks aren't just about technical climbing skill anymore, are they?
No.
They fundamentally include the sheer unpredictability of weather systems on a global scale and this immense logistical strain on the rescue infrastructure. An infrastructure that seems like it's being pushed past its limit again and again.
Right. And that leaves you, the listener, with a pretty challenging question to think about. A question that hangs over this whole region, really. If severe, unpredictable storms can trap hundreds of ordinary trekkers, if Everest itself is seeing record death tolls, partly because it's just too crowded, and if saving lives requires these almost superhuman efforts from local guides risking everything, then how sustainable is all this? Is high-volume tourism, both climbing and trekking, in environments that are becoming demonstrably more chaotic and more deadly, seemingly year after year?
A tough question indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the escalating challenges and recent tragedies unfolding in the Himalayas.